Daydream with me, let your mind explore all the things we...
Welcome back. In today's video, we're making sweet potato bread, and we're going to start off by using clean sweet potatoes that we've already pricked with the fork. I'm using a crock pot to make my sweet potatoes. I'm going to put them on high for 2 to 3 hours in the crock pot, and then I'm just going to make sure that they're done. If you don't have a crock pot, go ahead and use an oven. Put the oven on 425 for about 45 minutes until the potatoes are fork tender. That's the key here. You can also use an Instant Pot or an air fryer. Whichever method you choose, just make sure your potatoes are fully cooked. So we're going to go ahead and allow our potatoes to cool off before removing the skin. While the potatoes are cooling off, go ahead and begin to mix up your wet ingredients. We're working with 3/4 cup of oil, 2 eggs, 3/4 cup of white sugar, a 1/2 cup of brown sugar, a 1/2 tablespoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1 cup of sweet potatoes. Now, I'm using about 2 small sweet potatoes, and that equates to about a cup. That's how much you'll need for this recipe. Now, we need to use a fork to mash the sweet potato instead of using the mixer because we're making a bread, not a cake. So we don't want to put too much air inside of this batter. For the same reason, we want to make sure we use a baking spatula to slowly incorporate the sweet potatoes into the wet ingredients so that we don't dry out this batter. If we were to use the electric mixer and put too much air into this batter, we'll end up with a dry bread instead of a moist bread. Now it's time to add our dry ingredients. We have 1 plus 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Go ahead and give those dry ingredients a quick mix with the fork and then add them in with your wet ingredients. Use that same baking spatula to slowly mix these ingredients up together. And your batter should resemble a thick texture. Remember, this is not a cake. So it doesn't need to be pourable. It needs to be a loose, scoopable batter. Let's go ahead and get our baking dish. I'm using a loaf pan. I'm going to use some Baker's Joy spray. That's the original non-stick spray for baking, for baked goods rather. Now this spray consists of flour plus oil. And if you don't have the spray, then use flour and oil or flour and butter. Make sure that you coat your baking dish very well and go ahead and scoop the contents of your sweet potato bread inside of the baking dish. Your oven should be preheated to 350 degrees, and we're going to bake this for about 50 minutes. After the 40-minute mark, you want to go ahead and use a piece of foil to just make a light tint. Don't cover it tightly, but you just want to prevent the top of the bread from burning, okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and make a sweet glaze to go on top. This is completely optional, but believe me, this will elevate your dish to another level. So we're using some melted butter, and I'm adding some pumpkin pie spice. By the way, did you know you can substitute that sweet potato with pumpkin if you're into pumpkin? Yes, you need a cup of pumpkin if you want to make this bread into a pumpkin bread. But anyway, we went on ahead and added our cinnamon to the butter, the melted butter that is, and we're adding some pumpkin pie spice and a dollop of brown sugar, okay? Give that a good mix and then go ahead and brush it on the top of your bread. You can also leave this alongside the bread as you slice it up for your guests and allow them to go ahead and pour some of this glaze over top of each slice, you know? So, and all you see me doing here is making sure I break up that brown sugar. There were a few lumps there that I had to take out. Now this glaze is going to end up hardening on the top of the bread. Make sure you take a butter knife and go around the edges of your baking dish to make sure that the glaze doesn't harden around the edges to make your bread difficult to come out. If you use that Baker's Joy spray, you won't have to do any of that because the bread is going to come out the baking dish without any type of resistance. Now take a look at how the cinnamon and this glaze has just hardened on top of the bread. And when you go to slice into it, it's going to have a crunchy top crust, but the inside will remain moist and soft. This bread is really good. So as you can see, I'm going ahead and I'm slicing through. Now, I'm not trying to hide anything here. The bread is not dry. It's just that glaze on the top layer has made that top layer sort of crispy and crunchy, which I prefer that. Again, that glaze is completely optional, but you don't want to leave it out. Trust me, it really adds another dimension to this bread. And as you can see, I didn't have any problems getting that bread out of the pan. The bottom didn't have any torn pieces, nor is it burnt on the bottom. So here's a good look at that bread loaf sliced up. And this was a breakfast bread that we ended up pairing with some turkey sausages, some chicken bacon. I also made some grits and some eggs and some zucchini. This was a really delicious and also unique breakfast. Okay, now I'm showing you the inside of that pumpkin bread. I don't know if you were able to see those small pieces of, did I say pumpkin bread? I'm thinking pumpkin. I meant to say sweet potato. Maybe I should try making pumpkin bread. But you can see small pieces of the sweet potato showing through that sweet potato bread. And that's what you want, because you want to be able to identify what kind of bread this is. The color is spot on and the taste is superb.
Now let me put your mind at ease. I'm gonna tell you how I feel, and you can rest assured I'm fine. Alright, so let me shed some light.